Hey guys, so a little bit of a different recording studio here. Sending you this recording from my classroom in La Grande, just because I had promised that I wanted to get to you some stuff about hardware, since we do have this kind of a subsection that is listed on this week's assignments. And I wanted to give kind of an add-on to what's already in here. It's kind of a good jumping off point. Kind of, again, this is information that you kind of need no matter what you're going to be doing, whether it is going into a tech field or going into business or health support or anything like that. It's just kind of a good overview when we're talking about computer hardware. One of the things to get out of the way first is defining exactly what a computer is and what it is not. And there are really four characteristics that make something a computer, and these have been around for a while. There are some people that add things on top of it, but it really comes down to four things. One, it takes in input from the outside world. So it's a device that takes input in from the outside world, whether that is keyboard or a mouse click or video or information from a sensor like a thermometer or a gyroscope. It's anything it's information in the real world that it can take in through a variety of means, input means. Second, it has to be able to store that information. Whether that information is stored for a long time or short time is a different story, but it has to be able to store the information in some way so that it can use it. And then it can process that data. In other words, it's using it. It's doing something with the data. So it has to be able to take data in, store that data, and then manipulate it or do something with it in some way. And then the fourth and final thing is that it has to provide output. So it has to provide something. It has to provide something. It has to put something on the screen or print something out or provide some kind of feedback back to you as the user. So those are four qualities that you have to have if you're going to call something a computer. Now, the reason you really want to kind of get a basic understanding of computers, but even if you're not going to be working with them, is we have this tendency to, especially if you're trying to, arrange to purchase or anything like that with a computer, that get the best, get whatever you can, get the best of it. I can tell you for a fact I've been into a number of businesses that went out and bought gaming level PCs for their office use, for people who are going to be using Microsoft Word and Excel, and had spent 2-3 times more money than they absolutely needed to outfit their office. So you're going to have a number of different devices that you're going to be looking at when you're talking about a PC. So let's look at the input. You've got keyboards, mice, microphones, webcams. All of these different things are ways for your user to interact with the computer. And that's going to vary as to what you need by who's doing it. If they don't need a webcam, you don't need to get them a webcam. If you primarily get a keyboard, you want to make sure they're comfortable and that the user who's going to be doing it is familiar with how to use it. You don't want to get a side-by-side ergonomic keyboard that types like this with someone who's never used one before. Then you have, we talked about storage, being able to store things. And storage comes in two different varieties. The book calls it primary and secondary storage. I don't like that classification because it's up to interpretation. The technical terms we use are volatile and non-volatile storage or memory. Volatile means that it changes a lot. Volatile memory we typically refer to as RAM. Random access memory. So you'll hear if you're buying a computer that it has, X many gigabytes of RAM. RAM is memory that the computer uses to do its processing. So it takes information, it stores it in the RAM, and then it uses it, the processor, which we'll get to in a second, uses it to provide the output. So RAM is important. That is the basically I refer to it as the working memory. the reason it's called volatile storage, besides the fact that it's changing because you're using it, it also will disappear when your computer is turned off. Nothing is stored in there for long term. So it's one of the reasons why when you hear, something's going wrong with my computer, just turn it off and turn it back on again. It's because it clears out that volatile, that non-storage memory gets cleared out. And if there was a problem that was going on there, it gets effectively erased. The other type of storage is non-volatile or storage memory. So you have your hard drives, your flash drives, those kind of things. Those are meant to store data over a long time. So it's not really where the processing is done. It's not really where things are adjusted and changed. That's why when you save a file, it saves it to the hard drive, not in the RAM. But when you're using it, it's in RAM being used. I usually refer to this as, if you think about your desk, okay? If you've got a desk and you want to work on something, well, the file is stored in a file drive, in a file cabinet, okay? That's your hard drive. The file cabinet is your hard drive. You pull it out of the hard drive and you put it on your desk. Your desk is RAM. The more RAM you have, the bigger desktop you have, the more stuff you can be working with at one time. Okay. And if you have a really confusing file where you've got, 200 different sheets, you can lay those out much easier and work with them than if you just had a little desk space to work with. Okay, so think of RAM that way. And again, the RAM is something that can be added to. Storage can be added to once a computer is made, but it kind of depends on how the computer was made in the first place as to how that works. Then you have processing. Processing is done primarily by the CPU, the central processing unit. When you hear a computer is described as being, it has this type of chip at this speed, that is telling you how quickly it can process data. And what it comes down to is you'll hear a speed rating in gigahertz. A hertz is something that can be done per second. So it tells you how many things it can do per second and how, as a rating of speed. And then there's a couple other things that are integral to determining speed on processing units. And generally speaking, faster is better, but it's not necessary to get the best and the brightest for there either. Again, it comes down to what you're going to be using it for. If you're going to be using it for just office work, then usually what I recommend is if you're going to be purchasing something, look at its recommended requirements and go one step above. So if it's asking for a Intel i5 processor, go buy an i7. Okay, just one step above, and that will give you about 5 years of life on a PC when you purchase it. Usually if you go just that one step higher, you can expect a PC life to live for about 5 years. And that is kind of the standard. That's what you want your target is to be effective and useful for 5 years. Another type of processing that is done is graphics processing. You'll hear this, especially those of you who are gamers. My GPU, I got to have my GPU, my graphic processing unit, the graphics card. That is what handles the high-end video. So if you're doing things like running games, or if you're doing high-end video editing, or you're doing 3D rendering, then yeah, you need both a good CPU, a central processing unit, which does basically the math, and the GPU, which handles the graphics. You need both of those to be solid. But again, if you're not going to use them, don't really need to use the money on it. And then you have the output devices. Output devices we typically think of as our monitor, and having a good monitor is very important. But it's also things like printers or anything that your computer is going to put out into the world is considered output. Technically, communications is also output. So it's kind of an input-output device. So you have you'll hear network cards and things like that, things that connect you to the internet, either your Wi-Fi connection or a wired connection. That's technically kind of a crossover device between input and output, because your computer's bringing things in and it's using the same device to put things out. but they are still either an input or an output device, depending on how you look at it. Then we have the classification of what different kind of computers you have. What you guys are used to dealing with are what we refer to as microcomputers. They may not seem like they're microcomputers, but compared to mainframe server rooms, they are. If you guys have seen them in movies, the great big cabinets that line data centers, those are servers, and in a server farm, they're generally configured to be what used to be called a mainframe. What used to be is you didn't really have a computer on your desktop. You had a input device and an output device. You had a keyboard that would send information to the mainframe, which was in another room or another building, and then it would send output to the screen in front of you. You didn't really have a computer. You just had what was called a terminal. And those were mainframe computers. You don't find that around very often, though there are modern versions of it. So you generally are going to be working on a microcomputer or a laptop. Laptop, again, just a computer that is designed to be portable. So there are things that are different about it. Mentioned a mainframe. A supercomputer is one that is designed to do just massive amounts of processing. And they are very useful in their function, but they are very expensive to build and they are very expensive to run. And so generally you don't see them outside of academia or military usage. Engineering, you will find people using those as well. A lot of times, supercomputers, you have to actually, like it was in the old days, you had to book and rent time to use a supercomputer. And then we have the new generation of what are referred to as netbook computers. Netbooks are, if you have a Chromebook, that's a netbook. Basically, they are an operating system like Google Chrome, or you also have some Windows versions that are made for this. They don't have any storage of their own. They are very limited storage on their own. Everything is designed to be done on the internet. So basically, you are using that device to access resources that are stored on the internet, which is why for this class, if you are using a Chromebook or another type of netbook, you have to use Office 365. You can't install it because there's no storage to install. It has to be stuff that's done on the web. So there is that. And then we have, tablet computers and wearable computers. These are all things that, again, do different types of interactions, different presentation, what we call how it looks to the world. But these are all different types of computers. So yeah, that is kind of what we're dealing with on the basics of hardware. A lot of different things that fall into those categories, but I just wanted to give you a really quick overview on all of that. I know our book goes over how the CPU uses and advances in design and whatnot. So it does make a decent read. It can get kind of dry, but it will definitely help you to know how these things work and why they work, so they can help you make informed and intelligent decisions when and if you have to do purchases, if for no other reason. So yeah, I hope that was helpful, and we'll talk later.